it. Why don't I write about it and get it into the hands of people because it's so life changing? Okay, it's not about the money. It's about creating something and paying it forward.
You'll never be as confident in your skills of being able to make a comic as you are before you start trying to make a comic.
Hey, look, I failed. I failed a lot. I failed at Kickstarter. I had no idea what I was doing, but I've been able to hold a panic attack in about 30 seconds just with deep breathing.
My guest today is a board certified psychiatrist. He's a self-help author, a filmmaker, and a comic book creator. His work includes the political parody comic Prez versus Prez, Red Ram, and the documentary The Comic Collector, A Journey of Letting Go. He's currently on Kickstarter with a book called Bootstrapped, How to Make and Kickstart Your First Comic. So welcome to ComixLaunch, Paul Rashid, MD. How's it going, Paul?
It's going great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. You've got a very interesting background and story, and just up to a lot of cool things. But I guess where I want to start is your comic book origin story. Like, how did you first get into the medium? You're someone clearly has got a love for it. First as a fan and a collector, and now a creator. Where did that start begin?
Yeah, it started right when a lot of kids get out of reading comic books. I got into it. So I didn't have much hobbies growing up, and then was on a family visit with my parents, and we went to Galveston, Texas, and we were at a antique mall, and mom said, get something you like. And I was like 12. Sister said, oh, there's a box of comics. I said, comics are stupid. Later that night, my dad's having a conversation with one of his friends, and his son is into comics. So on our way back to the airport, I want to stop at that antique mall and get a comic book. Anyways, mom promises me to take me to a comic book store. Day one, I get bags, boards, a long box, Overstreet price guide, and McFarlane Spider-Man #1. And the comic owner gives me Green Lantern Volume 2 #1 for free. And then I'm a collector. In junior high school, I actually end up working at the Comic World in Charleston, West Virginia, every Saturday. A lot of formidable experiences start there, collecting ever since. So that's how it started.
Yeah, it's funny how that can be where like, once all it really takes is sort of one nudge or one key book or one cool cover or all of a sudden having a favorite artist and then you kind of get hooked. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, and that was sounds like around the time that you got into it was really an interesting
Oh,
time for
oh, it's a
comics.
great
Things were
time. I mean, every
exploding.
every time I go to comic book, I love comic conventions. I go to I love dollar bins. I got so many books, forget about it. But every time I see a pre-Unity Valiant book, I get that sense of nostalgia, But
Yeah.
just to follow up on that, so the book I am working on now is I want to teach people how to make their own comic book because, and maybe this is two pronged, but listening to you and your introduction every week, and I listen every Sunday morning. I wait for that drop. It's helping you make your comics. And you know what? How much, and I'm a psychiatrist, how much fear and anxiety, how long does someone think about it before they actually do it? And I want to help people start doing and finishing. Maybe they started, but the second part of that is in my book, Bootstrapped, before even writing your first book, I talk about where to start. And I'm a big follower of Joseph Campbell, Hero of a Thousand Journeys, and the hero's journey, which we all know George Lucas modeled Star Wars Episode 4, The New Hope, after the hero's journey. And I say, it starts with a passion, it starts with a spark. Find out what that is for you, and that's going to guide you because, as you know, and everyone else in making anything creative in this world, it's not easy. This Kickstarter, I thought it would be a breeze, and it's of course double to triple the amount of work you intend it to be. You think about even when you plan it out, and even when you use amazing resources like this comics launcher, you realize how much there is to do. But the passion, or as Joseph Campbell would say, find your bliss. If you follow your bliss, it'll help get you over those challenges, and it helped me get over all my challenges starting from zero about 10 years ago, writing my first book.
Yeah. So when did you, because obviously you were, became a fan, instant collector, and you're around comics, working in in the shops, in those formative years. When did you start thinking about, oh, I actually want to make some of these?
Yeah.
Was that always the thing once you got into it, or was it sort of a later decision that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring and start making some of
Great
this?
question. I realized looking at my life's journey, it is interesting how it all happens. You know, when I was in high school, and again, I graduated high school in 1997. So my friends and I would make these videos we'd show in school. We were recording, for those people that don't know, VCR camcorder over
Yeah.
the shoulder, not on your phone, over your shoulder with a battery pack and all the stuff, tape, film. We would then edit VCR to VCR with the sound mixer, and
Oh
I'd
yeah.
make these 3 and 4 minute short videos. This was in high school. Now, of course, I wish I had the technology of what is on this phone today. I think I would have been a child podcaster, filmmaker, etc. Anyways, if you go to YouTube and you type in Paul Rashid MD, I put up some of my poorly conserved VCR to VCR edits. Every time you do a copy of a copy, it gets worse and worse, but they're still nostalgic. And whenever I post them on Facebook, my friends from high school love it because it was such a thing.
Yeah.
But then I go to university. I go to 4 years med school. I do 4 years residency. So 12 years of higher education. I love it. I love my job. I love helping people every day. And they tell me things. They tell a psychiatrist something they'll never share with anyone else
Mm.
sometimes. But I was studying, head first for 12 years. Then I finish residency. I get my board certification, which is a 2 day exam. 1 day is paper pencil, 1 day is an oral exam. So when I finally finished that in 2012, I was in a fellowship for mental severe recovery from all forms of mental health. And the funny thing is in 4 years of psychiatry, I look back at my book that I studied to pass the boards. There was one page on psychosocial rehabilitation for severe mental illness, teaching people with severe mental illness, schizophrenia, severe bipolars, etc., how to recovery with or without medicines despite their illness.
Mm.
Anyways, there wasn't anything on it. I go to my source in 2011, of course, Amazon. There's no books on it other than 2 peer-reviewed books that are PhD psychologists. I could barely understand it, let alone a layperson.
Right.
That's when the calling started to begin what, after a 6 year journey, I published Recovery Revolution, self-published it on Amazon. So I'll condense this 6 year journey in about 30 seconds to a minute. But I had this calling, hey, if nothing else, I need to learn about it. Why don't I write about it and get it into the hands of people because it's so life-changing? I go to a Harvard CME in 2013. Long story short, I find out I speak with a psychologist who had made it with a self-help book on anxiety. Oh, I'm sorry, it was eating disorders.
Mm-hmm.
After her presentation, which was amazing, I go talk to her at her table and I just say, wow, you sold 5,000 books. You had made it. You were on Dr. Oz on national TV, prime time. And I just said, at that time it was more money. How much did you make?
Mm.
Oh, on 5,000 books, a quarter a book. You do the math, barely made $1,000.
Yeah.
And then I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not a writer. English was my kryptonite in school. I mean, I'm a scientist. I'm a biologist. I got the sciences down. English, not so much. They were marked up in red.
Mm.
6 years, after about 2015, it came again. It's like, okay, it's not about the money. It's about creating something and paying it forward. So then I start my learning journey of how to self-publish. Anyways, this book comes. Now, I published the book 2017 on Amazon. There's another calm, and I think wheels start turning. What else can I do? I've always been into film. Long story short, I get with a filmmaker who was from West Virginia. I'm born and raised in West Virginia. I live in Florida now, but born and raised in West Virginia. He is from West Virginia, went to NYU Tisch Film School. He's made award-winning films. I explained to him my idea of I want to make a film about giving away comics because after collecting for 2 decades, I had over a room full of books, and this is just a small comic cave. Anyways, he loved the idea. I make the documentary, The Comic Book Collector, A Journey of Letting Go. And the spin I wanted to do was, a lot of us collectors, we know how to collect, but why do we collect? And then totally flip it. It's one thing to sell a book. It's another thing to give it away. And how do you release something?
Mm.
And and how does it border on obsessive compulsive, etc. So anyways, what I want to do for you, I'm going to email you. So it's for rent or sale on Amazon Prime Video. But I want to give, if we can link it to the notes, I'll give a free Vimeo link where people can just watch it for free. It's a 30-minute documentary. And if it, if they get something from it or enjoy it, they can share my journey.
Yeah, so this was the book or the documentary that you did, the short documentary you did about giving away like over 1,000 books from your collection to
That's right.
like how did you like
Sure.
and I understand that at the time you were trying to you were being like traveling a lot as
Yes.
bringing your psychiatric treatments
I,
to
I was a traveling doc, like a traveling nurse. I was a traveling doctor from 2014 to 2018. So that's why I realized basically when I work at a job assignment for 3 months, because if the hospital doesn't have a psychiatrist, they can't see patients, and then the
Mm,
unit's temporarily closed. So there are staffing that focuses just on this. And then as I'm living out of a suitcase and I love traveling again, I said, wow, with a few pairs of slacks, a couple shorts, some undergarments, some t-shirts and button-down shirts, and a leisure change of clothes, I can live out of a suitcase. And so I started to stretch, I'm all about lifelong learning and growth. And these assignments did challenge me. And I went from collecting everything to just traveling with a suitcase. So that was
mm,
the inception of that idea. And the fact that how can I start paring down some of my collection? So how did I do it? Again, I spoke with Jonathan, my filmmaker, Jonathan Matthews. We came up with the idea. We brainstormed it. I was actually doing a locums assignment, a temporary assignment in New York City, Manhattan. We brainstormed it all. We did all the pre-production during those 6 months, and then we filmed for 1 week in December of 2017. He edits it together. I originally I wanted to like go to conventions and set up, but then I was going to go to a convention, but they said a psychiatrist filming in a convention, they barred me from that. So I wanted it to cover a lot more, but we
yeah.
ended up getting a great 30-minute documentary. It won an award of recognition at a short film contest, and now it lives online. So again, and I know, the crux of Bootstrapped is to teach people how to make their comic, but also something that is about selling what you can have, because again, this is valuable work and valuable creations that we give back to humanity that resonates with people. And if it resonates with people, hopefully more people will find it. But there is an evergreen idea too, that even if you kickstart a book, which believe me, that is where everything I'm doing right now is starting,
Mm.
it can live on as a video on YouTube. It can live on Amazon. And what's great about print on demand is, and again, I will say future uncertain with AI, because there's AI books out there and who knows, but as of right now in human history, we can create something and it can live on and potentially even if it's a small royalty, provide you royalties as long as it's living on some platform.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you, so just back to
Yeah. So
the documentary, like what did you learn about yourself in parting ways with a collection that you spent you've been, building for like 30 years? And were there certain gems that are just like, oh, I just can't let this one go, but certain ones I'm like, all right, wait, and what did you learn about the process of letting go?
sure. Sure. I think two big takeaways was there was a few books as I'm flipping through them. I'm like, do I, this one, I felt I wanted to pull books out that I was going to give out, but I just fought through it. I said, no, I decided to do this. I'm just going to do it. Now, like I said, I've collected about 100 long boxes in my lifetime, so I was only able to give about 1,000 away, or just a few long boxes. But so it wasn't like anything like a golden age key or anything, which
Mm.
I don't have any anyways. But I could feel it. I sensed it. There was an emotional tug. I remember getting this book. It's a great cover. It's a great storyline. It is a key book in this storyline. But you know what? I'm giving away, and someone else is going to enjoy it more. And the second thing is I was surprised as it resonated with other people. So as part of a promotion, the Jonathan Matthews, the filmmaker, knew someone at the local TV station, and he had the idea to contact them, and they did kind of a piece on me doing it, and they helped promote it I got with a local community center that high-risk children in the community go to after school each day. I partnered with them and I said, if set up a day to give out some comic books, would you be okay with it? Great. And they set up some, coloring masks and coloring their own comic page. It was a comic book day, gave it away to the kids. But the journalist who's covering the story, it resonated with her. And we're filming, she just opens up in front of me about her mental health journey. And I forget what issue of She-Hulk it was, but it was from the Silver Age or Bronze Age run. And she's on the cover and she's reading it and she picked that one up. And she just started, becoming tearful and sharing and hoping it could help other people. And then, of course, I go grab a bag and a board and I give her copy that resonated with her. So it was just cool to see it just resonate with other people, not just me. And of course, I was collecting in the late, in the 90s where people don't know or realize that besides Batman, Michael Keaton's Batman and Reeves' Superman, I didn't share my comic book collecting or reading in the public because it was a little bit more quiet and you can get made fun of or it was a little geeky or nerdy. And now I'll just say, as a part of my confidence, hey, I'm recording now. There's my background. There's some of my books on the wall with all my toys and things I share because I've gained some self-confidence and I love it. And now, hey, I'm a comic writer and creator too. So
Yeah, and I mean, culture has definitely moved to where now a lot of the biggest properties that are just universal and the most known characters are characters that sort of we grew up on. So
that's
even
right. Everyone has. I mean, everyone now Avengers, Iron Man, Captain. I mean, you name it. It goes on, and now it's cool and hip and San Diego Comic Con. But again, 20, 30 years ago, different story.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's clear you sort of you're an educator at heart and by training and have a passion for learning and then also, sharing your learnings. What are some of like the unique challenges that people getting ready to make their very first comic are going to face? Like one thing that just strikes to me is like, and especially people that have been making comics for a while is, it can be a little bit easy to lose touch with what it's like to like be starting from nothing,
Yeah, exactly.
and that's one of those things that like this podcast is, it's good to have creators on from all experience levels and all, at different stages of the journey because, I can never go back to being to like recreating what it was like before I launched that very first Kickstarter
Right.
and know all those feelings and know all those unknowns. But by sharing the voices of other people, it can help people that are at maybe different stages. But
Yeah.
what jumps out to you is like in particular the first time comic book creator, like what are some of those challenges that they
Yeah.
might have?
And I'll just start. I remember going to a Comic Con probably in the late 90s, and Mark Waid was speaking about writing. And at that time, honestly, I don't even know why I probably went just to see Mark Waid than his topic of writing. But what I do remember is he talked about don't do what I do. I read 10,000 comics to learn how to write. But, as a comic reader and the craft is something, I mean, it's like we've all seen movies, but who knows actually what goes into creating a movie project. And just like movies, I mean, comics are mostly a team approach. It's a smaller team. The budget, you can do anything you can with paper, pencil, digital, electronic, etc. But it's still a team approach. And if you don't know, you're just seeing the final product, which took hours and hours and hundreds of hours with a movie. So you don't see the movie magic or the comics magic. So I think the first thing is if you have the passion to do it, that's number one, you'll do it. But then how do you start? So I want to make it really simple is get the idea, and then, usually it's going to be a character probably, or some weird story that you want to portray, which is great because the more weird it is, the better for the comics medium. But then you have to know just the fundamentals. First of all, you have to know the basic story arc. We know that there's a 3-act for theater and movies, which has been around since the Greco-Roman times and how oral tradition started. Comics and movies are just another form of the oral tradition of us sitting around a fire and telling stories. So stories are innate in us. It's that archetypal journey. The Greek gods of Zeus and all, Superman is probably a modern day embodiment of that. So now though, you get the story arc. you have to write the script. Once you have the script, you have to formulate your team or be your team and start with the layouts and then go to the pencils and then pens and then lettering and coloring. And, you know, it's great. A valuable thing I found is working with an editor. And I have to admit, I am so guilty of not even using coaches in all areas of life. And,
Mm.
you know, we all probably see these on social media, you know, work with a consultant. But I'll say this, if you want to do this, and especially, you know, it's one thing if you just want to make your comic book. And it's funny, I was helping my godson and nephew. He was making comics, and we just had fun. Who cares? Just have
Yeah.
fun with it. But if you're serious about making a comic book, if you want to shorten your learning curve, not only do you get the book, a bootstrap, but you can work with an editor because they're going to take you through each step of the process. Because you don't realize that you have to go back to the script every time. First of all, you got to make sure you have a solid script, and how many pages is a comic book, you know? And how do you, there's these invisible art to the script. There's understanding how the spread is on even and odd pages of the book and how to make many cliffhangers. You know, if you don't hook someone in a podcast, in a book, in a comic book, or a movie within what, 30 seconds in today's hyper short attention span, they're going to go on to the next thing that's bombarding them, right? So you got to hook them. You got to use the many cliffhangers. You got to use a cliffhanger at the end of the story to help get them to the next part. You have to know how does the eye read? There's a Z line in a comic book page. And again, you don't have, these are a little more advanced tips I put in the book. You don't have to know this, but if you do know it, and again, you know it unconsciously as you read the book, you know, in the Western culture, we read left to right, etc. But we've all had the experience maybe reading an old book maybe and just seeing where you don't know where the panel is and are you going up or down, and then sometimes they used to put a red arrow, and it's just like anytime there's a word balloon, anytime there's a panel, anytime there's anything that takes your eye out of its normal unconscious flow, takes the reader out of the story. So that's some things that are, again, some advanced tips I put in the book, but I think that's it in a nutshell, is that start with your idea. If it's just for you and you want to give it out or share it, then just make it. And then we can go into some things I can talk about quickening your learning speed. But then if you really are serious and you want to learn the craft of making a comic book, there's some additional tips to go into those items.
Yeah, you know, and I think this is something that I guess like Dunning-Kruger effect kind of comes into play a little bit, where like I think you'll never be as confident in your skills of being able to make a comic as you are before you start trying to make a comic. And it's like well, I've read thousands and thousands of them, and I've seen every movie, you know, all the movies, all the Marvel movies, and I've you know, I know stories, and I got an A in English class growing up. I can just do this. But there are so many unwritten rules and things that you probably haven't thought about until you actually have to start thinking about. And it's good that you said, you know, the power of pulling an editor onto your team, because you know, it wasn't until I actually started working with an editor, or sort of, you know, even after I'd made, you know, a couple, half a dozen comics, that you start learning things like, oh, you know, there is a maximum amount of words that are going to fit comfortably in this balloon. And, you know, and you know, there's probably a problem with putting 400 words on a single comic book page. Yeah, that's not going to fly. And just all sorts of rules of thumb when it comes to lettering and everything else. So it definitely can speed up that learning curve by pulling in someone that has been through the whole process and had some success with it. And I know I saw you worked Dave Gallagher on yours, and you know, had some seasoned talent in terms of artists that you've been working with and things like that. So that
Yeah, and that's just another
helps.
thing, is just finding a team. You know, again, so I did an interview with Josh Blaylock, and you know, I've become acquaintances with him in the last several years, and you know, it's just kind of cool hearing his story, and it's just interesting because you don't know what, like I said, you don't know what you don't know until you have an editor. And I'm just so fortunate though, in today's era, you know, Josh started in the late 90s when, you know, there was no digital tools. Now there are resources. Again, you have to know where to go and how to use them. And I'm learning every day. But I mean, with the ability to do, again, just the power of this supercomputer that has more information technology than what launched people to space in 19, you know, whatever, in the 60s, 69 to the moon. It's just amazing. So you can start your script on your phone. You can do podcasting. You can do a YouTube video. You can do Facebook Live. But through social media and through connections and in-person conventions, I created my team, and it started with one project, and then we went to another and another. And I one thing I always say is always start with a discussion with if you're going to bring someone onto your team or to collaborate. Hopefully you have a good friend and you're a writer and they're an artist, or you're an artist and they're a writer, and you join up and you figure out how you're going to divide the ownership of it, and you're off to the races. But I always, whenever I find someone, whether it's a letterist, a colorist, an artist, an editor, I ask for an interview just like this. I like video. Just there's something about, I mean, I can see anyone across the globe as long as they have a cell phone, which over probably, I think 6 billion out of the 8 billion in the world do.
Yep.
But I make sure, hey, look, here's the story I wrote. It's my baby. Let me tell you about it. So I'll give you an example. One of my projects, I love this one. It's defrosted. And hey, look, I failed. I failed a lot. I failed at Kickstart, the comic book collector, because I had no idea what I was doing. And then, of course, guess who I found? And guess what podcast I devoured? ComixLaunch. And I learned. But I did defrosted. I just had an idea for this. I'm a huge fan of Seinfeld, and I just had an idea for this parody. So now I do this is what mind-blowing. I did one social media post on one of these comic groups looking for an artist. I got 40 responses. Now, that is, again, imagine doing this without email or social media 30 years ago. I don't know how I'd find someone who's an award-winning artist. Anyways.
Yeah, a lot of times you'd have to get lucky by having somebody in your town or a best friend or
a cold. I mean, how do you even cold call back? Anyways, award-winning comic artist. We jump on a call and I say, look, I'm a Seinfeld fan. Oh, he loves Seinfeld. He watches him on repeat while he's doing his artwork. So you have someone who's amazing artwork. So I look at the portfolio. Oh, this is another secret trick I learned. I learned the hard way. I paid an artist, unfortunately, but didn't know sequential artwork. We could talk about that later. But anyways, there's a difference between someone who can just do one nice drawing and someone who can tell a visual story, panel by panel, sequential artwork. It's like editing in my mind, since I was film first, it's just the visual medium has to be consistent. And if you don't have consistency, it falls apart. Weird. Yeah. Anyways, I reviewed his portfolio. He can do sequential artwork. I loved his style. Part 2, he is bought in. He loves the story. He's going to enjoy working on the story, which he did. And then a contract. As you know, it's a business. And as much as we all hate the business aspect, I mean, this is work. This is a creative work. It's very valuable and important to our society and our community. And just as a tangent, that's why I did Red Ram. It's a psychological thriller where I talk about an aged vigilante, like the Dark Knight Returns, a beat up, he's had some injuries. He gets on opiates and pain pills. And then I put in some mental health, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, even alcoholism. And that was how I birthed the Red Ram. But you find that passion project, you find that collaborator, but it's I pay my artists up front. I pay my editors up front. It's on me. The risk is on me for the Kickstarter. And hey, if I'm still behind, that's okay because it's my passion project. But I do a contract to just say, look, here's who owns it. Here's the split. Here's what you're going to get. And if you're fine with this, I'm just summarizing in a few bullet points what we discussed so it's clear and transparent, because you set it up. I think this is important for your audience, is that you set it up on the front end when it's all good feelings. And look, and sometimes even in my work, when I'm working at the hospital, I say, look, if this is a hard no, if you don't like this patient population, if you don't want to work at this hospital, if you're not engaged, and it's not the right fit for you, I'm looking for a marriage, a happy, long marriage. And if it's not for you, just say no. But if they're on board, I get that hard yes. Here's a contract of what we discussed. You sign it, and then you at least move on. The world's not perfect. Nothing's 100%, but at least you have that on the front end versus stories that I've heard in the industry. We've all heard these stories where creators do go on to create a mega, successful something. And it's rare. Hey, let's be honest, 1 out of 1,000 if you're lucky. But if you do hit, you want to be glad that you had that contract up front.
Yeah, and from experience, you're going to need that in place in order to move anything forward for like if you do sort of get that, long shot offer. So you might as well have it from the in there from the beginning and just have that taken care of as opposed to, leaving things unclear. So yeah, definitely good tips and good advice there going in. Now, because you're a psychiatrist, mental health is obviously something that has, probably for good measure been more talked about in the last couple of years, I think post pandemic and everything,
Absolutely.
for good reason. I know it affects a lot of creators, and, it's something that even if it's not something that one has struggled with in the past or struggling with now, life is going to throw its punches, and there will probably come a time in the future when things might turn and someone might be facing that kind of stuff. So, like, what are some of the best ways that creatives can just stay mentally healthy so that we can keep doing our best work and have long, fulfilling creative lives?
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up because it's so important. And again, this is one of my areas that I sometimes get blinded to. So I have to kind of pull like you, after you've made your first comic, it's hard to
Yeah.
remember. I've been in psychiatry, psychology, I mean, ever since Psychology 101 in college and then medical school and then my training. So I think, first of all, let's normalize it. We know 1 out of 5 people are going to experience anxiety or depression in their lifetime. And it's a part of the human condition, and that's okay. We want to feel emotions. These are good things because, I got some anxiety right now with this Kickstarter, but you know what? It's driving me. The inner feeling drives me to then do. I got to get on my social media posts, and after we get on this call, I got to shoot out some short form video of me and Josh to help promote it. So it calls to action. So use it. It's built for a good thing. Or if it's depression, what you need to look in your life, what is causing this, or what do you need to change? And then I'm going to suggest some tips that anyone can do. Exercise. If you can't do it, do something every day. It can be a walk outside. I say walk outside. If you have a dog, that's double good because dogs decrease anxiety and depression. And thirdly, you get some bright light in the first thing in the morning because we know that there's a circadian rhythm and we know about blue screens are affecting our light. So get that bright sun in the morning helps stabilize your circadian rhythm. And that one walk in the morning, you're doing 3 things that help energy and functioning,
Mm.
and it's free and it costs nothing. And then of course you got to stack. I'm all about stacking again these little tips if you find 1 or 2. So healthy eating, whole real foods, cut back the processed food, cut back the fast food. Hey, do I still eat out and do some fast casual? Absolutely. We live in busy times, but diet and exercise. I mean, if exercise was a pill, it would outpace any antidepressant or anti-anxiety medicine. Exercise has similar effects. And then just some mindfulness through the day. I like deep breathing. So one thing I did is I kind of created this anxiety into arts movement. And you know what? I'm still struggling to get it out there.
Mm.
But I had this idea. How do we transform anxiety into art? So how do we there's a psychological principle called sublimation. How do we take something that's negative and flip it into a positive? So if there's anxiety or something, are you going for a bike ride? Or if you're anxious about something, why don't you write a story about it or draw something about it? And through that, you're getting that psychic energy out. And
Yeah.
so like for what I'm doing in the Red Ram, it'll be I think in the 3rd or 4th issue. I'll be kickstarting the 2nd issue in a few months in the summer, late summer of 2025. But I have a page where I just teach deep breathing. Now, you can go on YouTube and learn what deep breathing is, but I have my character, Dr. Ratchet, like Nurse Ratchet, who's a psychiatrist, not spelled the same way my last name is, but he's in this book. He got tangled up with the Red Ram, but he's going to go to a community lecture. And in one page, I did an anxiety into arts where I'll highlight it and just say, this is how you do deep breathing. And if you do deep breathing, slow diaphragmatic deep breathing where your belly rises, not your chest, but your belly in and out, and you do a cycle of that for about 3 to 5 minutes, 3 times a day, that has been known to significantly reduce anxiety. And I'll just share that, and I share this in the first chapter of my book, Recovery Revolution. This is good. This is a good one. My first panic attack, I was in med school. I went to Heroes Con in Charlotte. This is around 2022, 23. I'm sorry, 2002, 2003. I have a panic attack. I am literally laying sprawled out in the middle of a convention center, and people are literally walking over me,
Hmm.
you know, and had a
Do you know
panic
what
attack.
triggered it?
Well, at that time, I hadn't eaten. I had they get the local first aid people there. It wasn't my blood glucose, but I hadn't eaten. It was probably a combination. I was in med school and had big exams coming up, so it's probably a combination. But since then, and with a lot of practice, and I do want to say a lot of practice, I have, we can have panic attacks. Hey, if I'm driving and there's a police officer spinning its lights behind me, I'm going to have panic. That's normal. That's a normal response. Now, what's not normal is if that happens out of the blue. That happened out of the blue, but there have been times in my life I've had panic attacks since. I go right into deep breathing because I've mastered it. And if you do 3 minutes a day, 3 times a day for a few weeks, you'll master it. It won't work the first time,
Hmm.
but I've been able to hold a panic attack in about 30 seconds just with deep breathing. And the last tip I want to give you is just going back to diet. And this is not going to work for everyone. So I'll always work with a dietitian or your medical doctor or read up on it. But I've been doing intermittent fasting for years, and it's changed my life. For me, what works, and everyone works differently, but there are studies that say even if you just narrow your eating window, instead of how we're trained from eating breakfast all the way to dinner, if you just narrow the amount of time you eat to about 12 to 8 hours, every hour you bring it down from 12, it gets even better. You reduce blood pressure, obesity, and other ramifications of chronic mental illness. So what do I do now? So here's a tip. Stay hydrated. At nighttime, we breathe off CO2 and water. So when we wake up, we're dehydrated. First thing I start my day with, glass of water, get hydrated, and that's going to help your brain because if you're dehydrated, you're not going to be functioning or thinking clearly.
Yeah.
I then do a black coffee, and then at lunchtime, I typically either do a green smoothie or a salad, and I make it a hearty salad. I throw in olives, capers, carrots, radishes. I mean, make it tasty, chewy, enjoy it. Get some great olive oil dressing if you can, because olive oil is great for our brain. Is mostly fat, so get that olive oil in there, and then I have a sensible dinner. And I can't imagine now when I'm on vacation I have an omelet for breakfast. I can't imagine how like I'm so bloated and just like low energy. I can't imagine how I went through school all those years, decades ago, because now I just feel so much lighter and I have the energy to sit down and create.
Yeah, it can definitely be. I think a lot of times people will use things like food as crutches, right? But I've definitely have heard about, the power of incorporating some of those techniques into your world, and obviously, what you put in, your inputs will drive your outputs, and so, to the best that we can feed ourselves with, good thoughts, good food, surround ourselves with good people. I think that all will contribute to,
Absolutely.
a better approach. And then, I guess just to, go in on and try to, attack and the stigma a little bit around it. What are some signs or what are some things that you would recommend for creators like, oh, like when should someone start to go see someone like yourself? Like when should they recognize that, maybe getting a little bit more sleep and a little bit of exercise might not be enough to
Yeah.
help them.
No,
Just
I think that's a
while we're here,
great.
I know we've got a lot of listeners and things like that. And
No,
I want to be,
absolutely.
yeah, I want to, as helpful as can to
Yeah.
the wide range of readers that we have coming
Yeah,
in here.
and I'll just start and I'll just say in the comic book creator realm, I've known just in the last couple of years, and like you said, I think COVID really brought this out, which is good. And the United States is probably the most forward in destigmatizing mental illness, and some other countries are not as aware of mental illness versus blaming it on societal issues. But number one, it's treatable. Number two, incorporate some mental health things I've mentioned: diet, exercise, light, etc. each day. If there's a thought of not going on living, red flag, go immediately to a medical doctor, a psychiatrist, emergency room. I mean, because unfortunately, this is so horrible. We know creators that have suicided and
Yeah.
in their lives. Terrible. So, number one, if it's that severe, automatically get help immediately. Now, if you've had mental health diagnosis in the past, you've been diagnosed depression, anxiety, or you have suffered and just never got treatment, go see someone. Again, it can be difficult to get in with a psychiatrist, so sometimes you might need to start with your primary care medical doctor. And they can start, they can make sure there's no, work up a medical testing to make sure there's no things like a hypothyroidism, which can, is our energy hormone, which could affect and cause and mimic depression, etc. Start maybe with a PCP, run some labs. Sometimes they can start a first option for anxiety or depression before you can get in with a specialist. Or again, we know talk therapy. And you know what? If you can't get in with talk therapist, do you have that person in your life, a trusted confidant? And there was a study that even, it's in my book, and I haven't referenced this for a while, but even if you just had a trusted confidant, does not have to be a mental health provider, just a friend or family member that you trust, that you can share something and knowing it won't come back to bite you, can decrease the rates of suicidal thinking, which I found was huge. And then lastly, I talk about early warning signs. So even if you've never been diagnosed, but I think early warning signs is the first step to make an intervention, whether that's the first things we talked about or seeking help. So when I talk, for example, if I talk to someone who has bipolar depression, which means they can have down severe depressions, but also the opposite of depression where they feel like Superman, early warning signs, sleep. Sleep is so connected to mood and anxiety. It's the number one thing. Half the time if I can correct someone's sleep, then the symptom will improve over time. So prioritize sleep. If you're getting too much blue screen or on digital screens, try to minimize it. If you need to get blue blocking glasses, get those if you're on a screen and you're an artist and you can't get away from it, or shift work to the early morning so you can try to at least mirror a daytime. So sleep is huge. And then if you just appetite changes, if you notice energy changes where you just can't get out of bed, those are early warning signs. And if you can't remedy those very quickly, like with someone, again, bipolar, if they're not sleeping for a day or two, I say immediately call your psychiatrist. But if your sleep stabilizes, great. If it doesn't, get some help so you can you can intervene and correct it versus it going on. And again, I'll just to share with depression, again, it's normal. We know it's very normal that people will experience it in their lifetimes, and many times it's appropriate. Maybe it's a grief or after a significant change in life. This is normal. And arbitrarily, the DSM, which is the Bible for diagnosing mental health conditions, arbitrarily picks 2 weeks. If it's 2 weeks or more, it's a clinical depression. But the point is we know the natural course of depression can self-correct on its own within 6 months. But why struggle? You can start a medication and it can treat it even sooner. So, and again, the way I look at medicines, and I take a lot of supplements too, sometimes you might find a supplement for you that works. But what I find is that medicines are a training wheel or something to help you deal with the stress of life. It's not something you have to be on the rest of your life, but it can help temporarily to get through, and so you can function. Because again, if you're not functioning, you're not working, you get behind on rent, oh boy, this can snowball fast.
Yeah. Great, just great tips and great, words of wisdom there. And I appreciate, anytime I have someone with a special expertise on the show, we want to hit that up as well as talk about all the other cool stuff going on. So, I mean, obviously the book Bootstrap is on Kickstarter right now, and I'm sure you'll take it to Amazon, and hopefully, it'll be at conventions and get in the hands. Is there anything, so, I'm looking at the Kickstarter page for it, and your collection of sort of how-to comics books out there looks similar to mine. I've got a nice shelf of many of those great books. What's one or two things that makes your book and your approach a little bit unique, and that to sort of make it a worthy addition to those collections?
Absolutely. So that was it exactly right. I put on there about the 15 or 16 books I read. Because again, I'm just a devourer of information. It probably comes from being a lifelong student till the age of 30. And when I was writing The Red Ram, I just started reading these books, and I learned it. So I'm trying to help people not have to read 10 or 15 different books. So I'm going to give one thing, because this is my specific, what I learned in higher education and in medical school. And at first, when I learned this, it was a little scary and a lot anxiety provoking. But when I'm learning how to do stitches or suture someone up from a cut or after a surgery, I learned this thing in my third year med school: see one, do one, teach one. Now, scares me because I'm like, this is someone's body, this is someone's life. I mean, this is going to be a scar that could be the rest of their life. I'm very scared. How are you serious? But that was the adage. And once you get over that, and of course, you're being supervised by an attending physician, you have a resident, and then there's a medical student. So it is, you're doing it with supervision, with your training. But again, it is simple. It is simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. It's 3 steps. So it kind of makes sense. So let's do an analogy with kickstarting. Well, I did one. I did the comic book collector. I didn't know what I was doing. I just thought, oh, you go to this Kickstarter, you do it, build it, they will come. I learned very quickly that's not how it works. But if you think about it, what is one of your key wisdoms that I learned in your early episodes? Go back a few projects. That was one of your
Absolutely,
weekly
yeah.
recommendations. So, okay, back one. You're going to see the page. You're going to see the layout. You're going to see what are the rewards? Which reward are you going to pick? Hopefully it's something you get in the mail. I haven't had time to open mine up because I've been so busy creating, but this one is awesome. I can't wait to crack this bad boy open.
Yeah,
Oxymoron.
hope you dig
but,
it.
how is the packaging? Hey, here's my, here's my Gemini mailer. How am I going to get this out? Because we've all had the experience of eBay and getting a book destroyed. So anyways, you're learning by investing in buying something from another creative. Okay, so you do one, you fund one. Now you see one, you fund it, you learn about it. Now you're going to do one, and you're going to do one with some guidance. So Bootstrap, I'm showing you, I take you through the exact process of how I created Red Ram, looking back with the whole editorial process, every step of the way. I give some images so you see what the script looks like, what the layouts look like, how did you add the balloons and the lettering, etc. And then if you can teach one, now look, once you do one, you don't have to teach it, but maybe you teach it to yourself. Maybe you teach it to your co-creators. Maybe you're at a convention and you're talking to someone. Oh, here, look at the process. Maybe you give as a Kickstarter bonus. On this printing, you have some behind the scenes, right? In the old days of DVDs, we had the behind the scenes. But you know this. And I know what your background in education, and I believe you had some family members that was a teacher. But if you can teach it, there's some mental gymnastics that can go in from we encode information and then we decode it. And if you can explain succinctly how to do it, you have then done it. Because there were times I was in med school lectures and I was learning and I was very passive. I was laying back in my seat. I was taking my notes, but it was passive. But when I started summarizing my notes, it's kind of funny. I learned how to learn right at the end of my med school career. Now, the reason it helped me, though, was because then when I specialized in psychiatry, I made it work. I took a 400-page book, and to pass my board exam, each week I would do a chapter, and I would summarize each chapter with the highlights. But what did I do? I was taking the information in, and then I was decoding it. And if you can teach something to someone, then you have mastered it. So you tell me, what do you think about my 3-step, simple but not easy approach?
Yeah, no, I love the see one, do one, teach one approach. You know, I taught in the classroom for a couple of years, and one of my favorite lessons that I ever gave, and this is kind of a pretty popular one, I think, in elementary school, but it was I challenged my students, and they were, second and third graders, but to write an essay about how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And easy, and they come up. But what I did was I then would take their essays, and I would act out their essays literally, and you immediately would see the lights. Oh, we skipped a step. Oh, we're just assuming that this is common knowledge, or like I'm like literally smearing peanut butter on the bag because they didn't tell me to open the bag. They just said put the peanut butter on the bread, so I'm smearing it on the plastic bread, and got a lot of laughs in the class, but also got the point across is that there is a different skill set that comes to teaching someone something, and you don't truly know that you know something until you can define it into a process and transmit that process to someone else, and then they can get some results to it. So I was not at San Diego Comic-Con this past weekend, but it was just fun to me to see a bunch of panels with creators that have been like in my ComixLaunch Pro program or that I've known for a while that are now out there spreading the gospel. And, at one point sort of came in with all like way more questions than answers. And now They're kind of like they're answer people, and they're spreading it on, and they're
No,
sharing.
that is so cool. I mean, you basically, hey, let's call it what it is. You have a kick launch university, really, and you're the founder and CEO. And now, I mean, I just got goosebumps because you, I mean, again, you created this thing, and now your students are now teachers. How awesome is that?
I think that's what it's all about. That's the. I think there is a Chinese proverb or something that like it's not the teacher that has the most students. It's the teacher that creates the most teachers, or something to that effect. I don't know. I'd have to double check that, but I've seen something to that effect. And yeah, I mean, and I think that is one of the things that really does separate the comics community from a lot of the other communities, and why the success rate is so high, is that we just kind of, for whatever reason, when you start to learn these skills and you have success with it, there is that feeling of paying it forward, and that people are a part of this sort of legacy and lineage of indie comics. A lot of people bootstrapping DIY to the core, but there is also something magical when you realize, oh wait, if I don't have to do this all on my own, and I can learn from some of the people that have come before me, like that's where like quantum leaps in the quality of your work happens, in the connections that you're making, the lights go on, and you can level things up. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool to be a part of it. And yeah, and so beyond this, what's next for you on the comic side of things? Or do
Yeah.
you have
No,
more
no, so
Red Ram
exciting.
coming, or what's
Yeah,
your
oh yeah.
plans?
It's so Red Ram is the next push. Red Ram issue number two. I'm again, and I was able to get comic legend Scott McDaniel to do a variant cover for
Nice.
issue two. So I'm going to be kickstarting that after once I fulfill the Bootstrap book. It's done, ready to go, and then it's a 4 issue miniseries. Issues 3 and 4 have been, let's see, I think they've been flatted. They're just needing to be colors rendered and then dialogue. So my hope is to just get 2, 3, 4 out in the subsequent months to late to early 2026. Again, he's my favorite character. If you love Batman or Daredevil, you're gonna love the Red Ram. So, and then I'm kind of going to your territory. The Red Ram. I pick up with the aging vigilante who's addicted to opiates late in his career, and I realized no one knows who the Red Ram is. So then I collaborated with an amazing writer, and I had Red Ram Origins. So I'm in post production and just the final editing of the book. But then I want to get kickstart this bad boy and then get this on Amazon. I'll do a special limited edition of this.
So is that a prose like
Yeah,
origin
prose.
story? Yeah.
Yeah, prose story. And again, I just listened to your prose today, or sorry, on Sunday, oxymoron. So I don't
Oh,
know.
the ComixLaunch audio.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the wheels are turning. But anyways, it's the prose, and then I have my second novel called Cymbalta. That's my 3 generations of this. It's kind of Red Sonja like character. There's a Viking era. It's over 3 time spans. Viking era, a modern era, and then a future era. That's a novel that I then I'm going to do some through my comics magic, which is the next thing but I'll be releasing some pages of that, and then if there's some interest there, I might, and I get some grip, I'll be working with my artist, 2-time award-winning artist Miguel Galindo, to then bring Alta to life, and then just two last things. So I went to, and I'm in Florida, so there was a Miami convention a few weeks ago, and I thought I wanted to give away a little ash can, so I had a little backup story in Defrosted, and I wanted to give something out to promote Bootstrapped, but I had 2 weeks, and although my Miguel Galindo is an amazing artist, I can't get 8 finished pages
Yeah.
in 2 weeks. So I just brainstormed. I was going on a trip to a family vacation. I print out the 8 backup pages without dialogue, the unlettered pages, and I thought, now this is my writing challenge. And we know that time constraints, any kind of constraint, is the mother of ingenuity, right? I created a whole new story. I mixed around the pages, and I wrote a whole new story from the same pages I already had. So I repurposed them, and then he lettered them. And then there's my comic impressions box right there that these came in. I said, Rich, can you get these done by the Thursday? Because I'm driving down Friday, shipped them out. And then it was just fun to just give them out. I mean, I just attended, I didn't table or anything. I was just going around, hey, do you like comics? You ever want to make your comic book? Boom, here you go, take a free copy, have fun with it. So I had this idea is after Bootstrapped and either before or after the Red Ram 2, I might collect. I had so many different stories. I now have 6 stories that are based on the same 8 pages in different order.
Hmm.
So then I'm going to kickstart Serenity or a multiverse or something, and I'm going to do a challenge to writers. And I'm actually going to put this on my Comics Magic Substack, probably a post in the next week or two. But I'm going to give anyone who subscribes, they can get access to the 8 pages. And any creator from a newbie to a seasoned professional, if they want to take those pages and take them in any order and make a new story, I just think that talk about a writing challenge that will, just like your peanut butter challenge, which I have to say, I mean, how cool is that to show a second or first grader that, because that teaches them something so tangible that's more valuable than a whole lot of book learning, and that's
Oh yeah.
coming from a book learning guy. But that is probably the strongest exercise I could imagine, is to give a writer a constraint and then see what you can create. So I'm going to do that challenge, and just see who wants to buy it, and share along the journey, because I think it's a cool way to exercise your creative writing muscle.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I know like Dinosaur Comics has sort of the thing where it's a web comic where it's like the same art every
Oh,
single
really?
update, but it is, different dialogue. I know Frank Martin has played with that. He does like a 4 panel strip where it's the same art for each all 4 panels, but wildly different topics and just conversations for each. So yeah, it's and I also know my buddy Clay Adam has a series where he takes like old public domain comics,
Yeah.
strips out the dialogue balloons, and then rewrites the stories or redoes
I would
the
love to see
stories.
those, because I've toyed with free domain just to have fun with it. I've thought about that. I'd love to see some of his work.
Yeah, yeah. I think they're called Refried Comics is
Refried.
the
Okay, I'm
brand that he
gonna
does it
look
under.
into that one.
Well, cool, Paul. You're up to so much cool stuff. I'm going to be keeping an eye out on it and wishing you well. And yeah, thanks for sharing everything that you did today with me. I think that's going to help a lot of creators. And the book is called Bootstrapped. It's going to be on Kickstarter for a while now, and plenty more coming from Paul and his team.
And,
So
and,
we
and I'll
will.
just tell you, just the easiest way, because I want to give you guys some value. Just go to Comics Magic newsletter, because I have a special secret reward. Guess who I learned that one from? So
Oh,
if you go there, Substack, Comics Magic, Miguel and I, my artist, and I just said, let's do something a little bit of highlighting independent creators, kind of a little akin to how we used to read Wizard magazine years ago. So Comics Magic on Substack, free to subscribe. We try to push out daily tips, and in there I just did a post where you can get a $5 coupon off the Bootstrapper Kickstarter. So start there, subscribe, get the coupon, check it out. And I again, the last thing I'll just say is I learned a lot of value from you. Was the hardest tiers are so hard. I'm barely can figure out. Again, listening to almost every one of your podcasts, I can barely figure out these damn stretch goals, but and add-ons. But hey, if you just want to learn, if you're creative but you don't know where to start, hey, I have a $5 get the PDF digital in your inbox immediately. But as I go each tier, I try to add something more that really adds value. So check it out, and I hope even if you don't buy it, just subscribe and get some free tips in your inbox every few days.
awesome, Paul. Well, I appreciate your time and your talent, and thanks so much for sharing it with the Comics Launch audience today. Great to meet
Thank
you.
you. I appreciate you and all your work, Tyler.
All right.